I am calling this meeting to order with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent, could you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Ms. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Futrell?
Here and ready.
Madam President Ballantyne? Here. Mayor Curtatone?
Present.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. O'Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Patone?
Here.
Dr. Ackman?
Present.
Ms. Norman?
Here.
We are fully present.
Well, I am thrilled to see so many people here tonight. I think this is our largest turnout ever. Very exciting. We do have our student reps, so we're going to go right to item number 2, report of student representative. No? You're all set? It's lovely to see you, and I hope you're enjoying your senior night, your senior year. Let's just get a couple of quick housekeeping things. Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Second.
So there is a move to approve the January 28th, 2019, and the February 4th, 2019, made by Mr. Futrell, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We are now going to move on to public comment. I'm going to just read what our policy is so we're all on the same page. And speakers are typically allotted 3 minutes. Depending on the number of speakers, the chair has the discretion to limit to 2 minutes, which I am absolutely doing. So 2 minutes, and then you will be timed. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or a dialogue between citizens and the committee. It's a resident, and you need to be a resident of Somerville, opportunity to express his or her opinion on issues of school committee business. Public comment is intended for the school committee to receive input from the public, but not as a method to receive specific requests, which should be channeled through the school and district leadership or individually to a school committee member. To this end, members of the committee will not reply to public comment in the course of this meeting, though individual members may follow up and items from public comment may be taken up in future meetings. The committee and administrators will not be prepared to directly respond to a citizen's questions posed in this forum. And public comment is a matter of public record, so speakers should be aware that all meetings of the school committee are filmed live on public access and are recorded for future viewing. Public comment is also made part of the minutes of the meeting, and submissions of a written copy of your comments is encouraged. Comments without a written submissions will also be summarized in the official minutes. There we go, got that out. And to ensure multiple opinions on a given topic are heard or for other reasons, the chair may call on speakers outside of the order of the sign-up sheet. And it is not an opportunity to speak about specific employees in the Somerville Public Schools in any way that can be identified. And any attempt to do so will immediately be ruled out of order by the chair, and speakers will not be allowed. So we will be timing, and I'm going to read off. Normally it's 20 minutes. If you stick to 2 minutes, we have 12 speakers. We're going to get through this. So first up is Michelle Bourne. And if you can say your name and your address when you come up. After Michelle is Mary Lou Carey Sterniolo, and then Matthew Miller. And can you come up to the podium and speak? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Superintendent, and school committee members. I'm Michelle Bourne, 59 Curtis Street in Somerville, Massachusetts. And I'd like to ask, there's a number of folks here who are with me, and we're here to address our concerns about hate and bias in the Somerville school. So I'll ask any of them to stand up. Thank you. As we've shared with you earlier this week, and in many cases over the last several years, we are deeply concerned about our children's experiences of hate and bias in the Somerville schools. We have learned through conversations with our children, each other, and our faith leaders about outward expressions of anti-Semitism, bias against Muslims, racism, homophobia, and xenophobia. We know that hate speech and bias are growing at an alarming rate in Massachusetts public schools, doubling in the past year alone, making the need for addressing these issues urgent and clear. As we wrote in our letter, we asked that the district provide clear policies and guidelines for teachers, staff, and administrators to follow in response to acts of hate and bias, funding to support comprehensive anti-discrimination training for teachers, staff, students, and interested parents, clear communication in the school community about acts of hate and bias and the district's response, and opportunities for students and the broader community to have meaningful conversations to heal, learn, and become leaders in fostering inclusivity. Addressing these problems will put many of us outside of our comfort zone. Doing so with the necessary transparency and integrity will require commitment. This work will not be easy, but the results will be invaluable. This request is a starting point, and as we make progress, more needs may come to light. We are eager to work together with you and the city to take whatever steps are necessary to bring about a truly inclusive school environment for Somerville's children. We ask for your shared commitment in doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
When we have written copies.
Thank you for the written copies. If you have speak tonight and don't have written copies and you want to send it in to us later, by all means, you're welcome to do that. Fantastic. Thank you. Mary Lou Sturniolo. In the interest of time, if you could be ready to pop up and be ready to speak, and then Matthew Miller, and then Max Nadeau.
Thank you. My name is Mary Lou Carey Sturniolo. I'm a parent in the school. I also work in the schools. I'm not going to read what I wrote, so I'm just going to wing it, and so I don't have anything to present afterwards. I am here to speak against the Powder House project proposal for many reasons, but one being that I see a lot of innovation already happening in our schools. The PTAs met with the school committee 3 weeks ago, and we presented many requests, dreams, and hopes that we had. We have great things happening in our school, and it really worries me if we were to put our energies into yet another new school. The Winter Hill is an innovation school. We have a brand new high school being built. We have so many things that we are looking forward to, and we're already doing great things. It really worries me that we would put more energy, focus, and finances into a new school. My last comment is that most parents that I have spoken to knew very little about this proposal, which frightens me, which speaks to me that we don't know enough about it. And when I tried to go online and learn more about it, things were very vague to me. I can't imagine how a person who doesn't speak English could understand this proposal. So although it is being marketed as a open, diverse school, I'm really concerned that it won't be that, and I just hope that the school committee votes against it. Thank you so much.
Next up is Matthew Miller, and then Max Nadeau, and then Matt Gray. When there's 30 seconds left, I'm going to hold up a piece of paper. You guys are all doing great on time.
Hi, I'm Matthew Miller. I live at 52 Madison Street, just a block or so away here. I'm a parent. I have 2 students in the school system, and I'm here to speak up in favor of the Powder House Studios. I think it's really important that we have this in our school system. My kids have been in the schools, and I've been very involved, and I know we're doing great things here, but particularly my oldest child, despite all the wonderful things the high school is doing to help support her, it's just not an environment that she fits into very well, and it's having options for her and for other children where a lot of these scientific research-based innovations that this school is bringing forward will just really provide more opportunity for students in Somerville that I think that a lot of kids really could use and otherwise may end up in out-of-district redirect programs and things that are much stronger interventions, and I really think it would be great to keep kids in Somerville. I know we're doing great things in the school systems, but I think we also need more options. And I think this is partly, I think it would be good for my kid, but I also think that this would be good for Somerville as an innovative city and as just as a place that I care about. I think this will be good for the city. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Max Nadeau, then Matt Gray, then Greg Nadeau.
Hello, my name is Max Nadeau. I live at 5 Thorndike Street, and I'm a senior at Somerville High School. On balance, my experience with Somerville High School has been terrific. The phenomenal teachers and unique student body have created a school culture that I can truly characterize with encouragement, connection, and community. but I'm here for the second time tonight to impress onto all of you the necessity for more college counseling support at the high school for addressing what I believe to be SHS's greatest failing. Somerville High School is tragically underserving its students in the college application process, and it shows. At Somerville High, where our single college counselor splits her time between assisting all 300 seniors and administering all the standardized tests, our 6-year college completion rate is at around 30% of graduates. At PHA, where each full-time college counselor is kept fully busy by 25 students apiece, the 6-year college completion rate is at about 65%. I saw numerous friends of mine experience the consequences of this neglect, missing deadlines, writing shoddy essays, and expressing their feelings of confusion and anxiety about the process. This week, I'm watching many of my friends receive disappointing news from the colleges they applied to, leaving them wondering if they could have done more. This needs to change. I see the school system put so much focus on the minutia, investing student and teacher time in extra test preparation and academic support so that students can achieve the highest grades and scores possible to look good to colleges. Don't get me wrong, I truly believe that these measures are worthwhile. But to neglect the crucial final step of crafting an application to launch our students into bright, stable futures is a terrible oversight. I want to be clear, 1 or even 2 additional counselors would be an insufficient change. Just as a reminder, achieving parity with PHA would mean hiring 11. Who are the students that this problem hurts? It hurts all students, but in particular, it hurts those without support at home. These are students who are toiling and striving through 13 years of school and achieve great success, only to falter on the finish line because they can't present their best selves. I urge you all to address this issue in the budget with more than just one new position. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Matt Gray, then Greg Nadeau, then Matt Timbalis.
Hi, thank you. I'm Matt Gray. I'm a Somerville resident. I live at 7 Oakland Avenue. I'm also a small business owner in town, and I came here just to voice my support for the Powder House Studios project. I'm a strong believer in public schools. I believe that it's the most equitable and democratic system of education, and it's better than thinking of things going the direction of charter schools or other private school solutions. And I think that an idea and innovation like the Powder House Studios is a way to really bring innovation into the public school system in a way that's equitable and democratic for everybody. And I know that there's concerns over cost and concerns over diversity, but I think that trying these types of innovations is really important. Just giving them a try, seeing if they work. If they don't, it's a really great way to re-energize the public school system. Thank you very much.
Next up is Greg Nadeau, then Matt Timbalis, and then Rachel Weiss. Sorry.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Greg Nadeau, also of 5 Thorndike Street. I have 2 children in the high school. The design of the proposed powder house is not just appropriate to a small niche of students. The ideas of applied, personalized, competency-based learning apply to students of all abilities and backgrounds. This transition from the old industrial model of seat time, letter grades, and standalone subjects to a new model will be extremely challenging. The district is doing some good work leveraging grants from Barr and Nellie May, but must dramatically accelerate its pace to see these changes in months, not years. I, like all of you, see the $10 million grant from XQ could create an exceptional opportunity if, and only if, the grant brings new resources to the system. However, as I understand it, XQ has shown no willingness to enable its funds to be used to operate the school. So what do we get? $7 million in cuts from other programs over the first 3 years at a new school at a new location that neither is justified by given enrollment projections nor sustainable. If the school is approved, it should only be with the following conditions: no net Somerville School District funds used to operate the school for the first 3 years, no commitment beyond 3 years, and insist that the district staff and students rotate through the school, not be isolated. If, however, the school is not approved, the school committee must commit to a concrete timeline to realize meaningful structural changes to the core systems of schedule, assessment, and student support.
Okay, thank you. You guys are killing it with the under 2 minutes. This is great. So Matt is up, then Rachel Weiss, then Alex Puri, and then Benna Shavera.
Hi, my name is Matt Timmons. I reside at 96 Bartlett Street in Somerville, and I have two students over at the Argenziano School. And I'm just here to very quickly just voice my support for the proposal that you heard from Ms. Soto and Mr. Silva earlier tonight, and to really highlight one area that I think I saw some of the school board actually take out highlighters, and it was the number of, it was the student to guidance counselor ratio that is now swelled to 550 to 1. And being in education for myself for over 20 years, it's interesting that many surrounding communities usually have a guide of 200 to 1. So that's almost triple what it should be. And then we hear about a lot of the behaviors that are happening over there. So I would really love to have both the school board, the mayor, and the superintendent maybe reevaluate and see how you can get more support over there. Even the hiring of 1 or 2 more guidance counselors would not only bring that ratio down, but it would also offer the opportunity for them to work together. It's very isolating enough being a teacher and working with kids, and to be the only guidance counselor over there, I would wonder how they would feel. So even having 2 or 3 more colleagues, they can start to be a little more proactive and start to do some of the things that can bring some of the behaviors and the performance down. So if there's any way that that could be done in this year's budget, that would be very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that comment. Rachel Weiss, then Alex, then Benish Rivera, and then Katie Gradowski, and that will, you pass. Okay. There you go.
My name is Alex Peer. I live at 7 St. James Avenue in Somerville. I'm speaking as a former parent of the Somerville schools, but also a parent of children who have been in private schools, parochial schools, and were homeschooled. So I've a broad range of experience. And that has taught me, painfully sometimes, that children are not uniform, and we need to have innovation and new ways of looking at education in order to satisfy the needs of all of the people in the city in their various levels of education and their various forms that they need so that they can flower. I'm speaking as a parent. I'm also speaking as a taxpayer. Happy to go along with building a wonderful new high school. If we're investing money in buildings, we need to invest money and time and thought into what goes on inside. And I think this innovation has been worked on for a long time. Serious thought has been given to it, and I'm in total support of it. I think it would be a great disappointment if we don't step out and say, okay, we have a place to experiment with the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Benjamin Echeverria, and then Katie Gradowski.
Hi, I'm Ben Echevarria, 7 Gilman Terrace. I am a former pupil of the Somerville Public School System. And I'm here today actually on my capacity as the executive director at the Welcome Project. We are in favor of this new school. We spent a year talking to our constituency, talking to immigrant families, talking about all the different things going on. And in fact, one of the biggest issues we deal with on a daily basis is education, to the point that the Welcome Project will be actually having its first advocate starting next year within our programs, an educational advocate, because we're continually working with the school district and trying to change things. The reason why we're for this is because, just like many people have said, there takes a lot of different approaches to education. Several parents that have come up to me, you know, and I'll stop for a second. And I spend a lot of time both at Prospect Hill, I spend time at St. Catherine's, and to see the amount of students of color that are there, and to talk to those parents, and for them to say how they don't trust the school system is very much so and happens on a daily basis. Even when I talk to our programs and our students, and even with our constituents and their parents, we continually hear the same thing. We need a school with smaller class sizes. We need a school that we know demonstrates actual in terms of bridging the gap and the achievement gap, which we know happens when we have longer school days and we know we have a longer school year. I understand funding is a real issue. Equity costs money. Let's be clear here. Equity costs money. If we're going to talk about equity, then we have to literally put skin in the game, which means we're spending some money. So today I'm asking all of you to put your faith into a school and take a chance. There are things, and in our letter I wrote a couple of things that I think that I'd like to see changed, but let's take a chance here because equity can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Gradowski.
Hi, my name is Katie Grodowski. I live at 202 Pearl Street in Somerville. Thank you for taking the time to hear my testimony. I fully support this project. I urge a yes vote or a yes with conditions attached. I want to talk about the budget. I have heard people say this project is too expensive. I have heard others express concern about its impact on the district. I've looked at the budget dozens of times in the past month, and from what I can see, this project is fully funded. It pulls no money from the city beyond the required per pupil allocations and the annual discretionary increases. As written, it appears to operate at a modest surplus of about $286,000 a year. There are two reasons I can think of why a project this small and this well-funded would be considered a budget liability. The first is if XQ hasn't actually committed to pay, and if they haven't, the city should vote no, sight unseen. The second option, which seems unlikely but which is certainly possible, is that the district does not intend to fund the full per pupil allocation or is looking for ways to offset that allocation to minimize wider impacts on the district. I'm assuming this isn't the case because that would be illegal. No net funds and a no net neutral policy is another way of saying that Somerville would refuse to fund its own students, which is not acceptable in a public school that is receiving in-district support. If there are significant budget impacts, I would urge the district to share those figures so that people can make a real assessment of the risks and trade-offs. Based on DESI's most recent numbers, Somerville's actual per pupil allocation is closer to $19,000 or $20,000, not the $17,000 estimated in this budget, which means we're likely getting a discount of $2,000 to $3,000 a student. If we're looking at enrollment, it's worth noting that in a given year, Somerville High gains or loses anywhere from 29 to 44 students just through normal fluctuations. At the end of the day, this is an equity issue. Powder House is not a charter school. It is an innovation school funded entirely within the district, which has been specifically designed to serve the needs of high-needs students, many of whom currently have nowhere else to go. This proposal does exactly what we've been saying we need for years, which is experimental, targeted work and personalized learning viewed through an equity lens. If we're going to walk away from 7 years of work and a fully funded proposal, we deserve a full accounting of what those financial considerations are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment. We are now moving on to agenda item 5, report of the superintendent. Superintendent Skipper.
Through you, Madam Chair. I want to begin by just addressing the parents that bravely came forward and gave some testimony around the rise that we're seeing in a lot of the hate and the bias that's happening nationally, and it's certainly...
Can we just clarify that you were not responding just to it, that this was an issue that was brought up earlier and that you're not responding to public comment, but to a
Certainly.
petition that we received last week?
Certainly. We received the letter that these parents had sent that I'd like to comment on, but that you're here present tonight, so I can do it to you while you're in person. I did send a response back, and that is that, you know, it is troubling at lots of levels that we are seeing the rise of bias and discrimination and hate speech and symbols in ways that we haven't before, both in Massachusetts and also here. And so I've enjoyed being able to work with you, as has my team, over the course of the last year in beginning some of the unpacking of this to make some steps in a positive direction. We appreciated being able to meet with the rabbi from your temple, for some of you, and to be able to concretely understand what some of the issues were. We contacted ADL. We've also been working with the New York Leadership Academy, as you know, as we responded back. And we actually have Facing History and ourselves coming in to do an all-district leadership training on April 1st. But these are only the beginning steps. You know, this requires more of a community conversation. Been in touch with the mayor's office, who fully supports helping with this. It's something that we need to take on as a community, as a school district, and with your support. So I thank you for that. I look forward in the coming weeks to have another meeting so that we can begin to get to some of the concrete steps that you've asked for and to begin to do the hard work that's needed. So thank you.
No, not in this forum, thank you. Dr. Ackman did point out that we should take the field trip to Puerto Rico out of order. I didn't know if you have more in your district report. Okay, so thank you very much for coming. We are going to skip ahead because we have educators in the audience who need to come be at school tomorrow morning. So I would ask the sponsors of the high school trip for grades 9 through 12 to visit Puerto Rico to step up to the podium. And please introduce yourselves.
Good evening. My name's Stephen Ensdorf. I'm second-year teacher at Somerville High School for the Social Studies Department, but also a 22-year veteran of teaching. In the past, I've led trips to Washington, D.C., trips to concentration camps in Eastern Europe, and an exchange trip to Rwanda for a month. I, along with my department head, Alicia Kirsten, are proposing a Somerville High School-led trip to Puerto Rico during April, a break of 2020. As outlined in the memo that I think you guys got, this trip has many academic elements that include history, culture, science, service learning, and politics. We plan to take 20 to 25 students with us. Given that we do not want money to be any type of reason that a student cannot go on the trip, we intend to do a lot of fundraising around the trip, as well as use some of our free spots that we get through the company to offset the cost of travel for the students who need it.
Thank you. Is there any questions about this trip from any of my colleagues? Okay. I have one request, which is the fundraising that you did for the Costa Rica trip was fantastic. And if Mr. Maloney could get back into the Fab Lab, that would be awesome. Dr. Ackman, do you have a question?
I actually do.
Yes.
I have a quick one and then what company?
Explorica.
And then can you speak to the service learning, please?
Right now we have planned we haven't fully gotten it yet. It would either be to visit the community La Perla, which is below San Juan City, or to go out to a rural school and see and work with some students out there. Additionally, one of the things that we want to get on the plan is to visit with some political figures in the city of San Juan and learn about the impact of the hurricane and other environmental issues faced by Puerto Rico.
Are there any other questions about this trip? Can I have a motion we are just approving this one field trip at this point, and then we will go back to our agenda in order. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Palmer. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Bon voyage. Happy trails. Okay. So we are going to return to, thank you for letting us do that out of order, to the report of the superintendent and move on to the district report with the Powder House Studios deliberation. I'm going to set us up some, and then I'm going to open it up for deliberation. I really want to thank everyone for coming. This is a huge turnout. It's a really big decision for the school committee. We always welcome folks at our meetings, and especially in something as significant as this decision. I'd like to give a little history, and first of all, I'd really like to thank the Powder House Studios for bringing this idea and sparking such lively conversations about innovation and education and sustaining it for such a long time. For those of you who don't know, this idea came, I think it was in 2012. I'd also like to thank the many educators and community members who have participated in this process. You know, going back to the first iteration of the innovation plan, which included John O'Terry, Karen Woods, Adam Sweeting, Tony Parentazzi, Chris Angeli, Lisa Tatterson, a parent who was served on both of them. I believe Tony Ciccarello was in there too, and the Powder House staff. And a thanks to the second innovation committee, which included Powder House staff, Superintendent Mary Skipper, Steve Stefano, I see him, Banish Vera, Mario Souza, Jill Geiser, and myself, who all worked on the plan and voted to approve it on March 9th, 2017. So we are almost at the 2-year anniversary. And in those 2 years, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours have been spent exploring and questioning and working together to strengthen the plan. And a huge thank you to Alec Resnick and Shauna Lynn and the rest of the Powder House staff, and Superintendent Mary Skipper and Chief of Staff Jeff Curley, and Mayor Curtatoni's been in these discussions along with his staff. Really tireless work. And I'd also like to thank my school committee colleagues for year after year asking the district to keep pursuing this idea, see where we could go, to valuing innovation, and really putting a lot of thought into it, and for reading, and reading more documents. But to be clear tonight, what we're voting on is the school committee has received the applicant's March 2017 innovation plan, and we received it on January 14th. And the innovation school legislation requires school committees to hold at least one public hearing on the innovation plan. And over the last 2 months, Somerville School Committee has held 2 public hearings, I think at least 15 office hour sessions throughout the city, and foregrounded presentations and deliberations about Powder House Studios in 5 full school committee meetings. We have really tried, we know it's a short process that the state has given us, but we've really tried to be out there. And also would like to thank all the people who have given comment, both in person, at public hearings, here at public comment, and in writing. The law says that after the receipt of the innovation plan, the school committee shall, on the basis of the quality of the plan and in consideration of comments submitted by the public, undertake a final vote to authorize the innovation school for a period of not more than 5 years. I now call for a motion to take a final vote on the authorization of the March 19th, 2017 Powder House Studios Innovation Plan.
So moved.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Palmer. Is there any discussion? Mr. Futrell.
Thank you. Through the chair, I've prepared a statement on this, on the vote tonight. So I'm just going to read that. Tonight's vote is really important to me because it has both a tangible and a symbolic effect. We can move forward with a specific proposal or not, as well as communicate to our district, parents, and community that Somerville Public Schools is committed to innovation. As someone who spent my early years in foster care and as someone who served in the military with incredibly smart people for whom traditional education didn't give them enough opportunities to show their strengths, I care deeply that we as a city are giving our kids the best opportunity to shine in Somerville. Excuse me. The Powder House proposal has resonated with me over the last 6 years that I've served on the school committee because it proposes giving kids more agency in their own educational career. It's clearly resonated with the community as well, since by my rough estimate, 70% of the community outreach to me has been in support of the proposal. Powder House Studios proposes that we reimagine what school looks like for middle and high schoolers, and for our teachers as well. Ultimately, the Powder House Studios proposal is trying to do something that traditional public education struggles to do: offer distinctly different educational models within one system. For example, our 8:07 a.m. to 2:35 p.m. school day doesn't seem to serve anybody well, not least our high schoolers, which science has shown do better with a later start, or working parents who must adjust their lives or give up a paycheck to ensure their kids are picked up or have supervision. Or 3 months in the summer, where low-income families struggle to provide for their kids and avoid the summer slide, where higher-income families invest financially in advancing their kids on math and English. These are foundational blocks to societal inequities that start right here in school districts like ours. The Powder House proposal is a big bet that a different model will yield different results, and that proposal has drawn me in for years now. There are critics that say that this proposal costs too much, but who also agree that paying teachers an average wage of $60,000 in a city that requires $75,000 to get by isn't right. Or they say that a cost per student of $21,000 is too much in a district where we pay over twice that for some students who need that investment to grow and learn. Though it is not accurate to say that this proposal is fully funded. In years 4 and 5, there's a placeholder for $1.6 million annually of grant dollars that have not been allocated or awarded by any foundation, and represents only an assumption that we will receive those funds. In my opinion, it is not the absolute amount we should be reacting to, but the impact of that investment. There are critics of the proposal out there that say that some class sections at the high school will need to shut down if Powder House is successful. If Powder House serves those students better, then it does not seem an unreasonable cost to shift resources toward a program that does what we're all aiming for. There are new problems that a section shift would create, such as what to do with the new high school building that's designed for optimistically high enrollment. But we should be building programs that serve our kids and not driving kids to serve our buildings. All that said, there are other criticisms of the Powder House Studios proposal that resonate with me. In short, while I recognize the immense amount of work that the PHS team has done, and in collaboration with Somerville Public Schools, there are many deep questions I have that will result in my not supporting this proposal tonight. The length of time it has taken to get the educational plan to its current state, inclusive of all the extraneous negotiating we've done, hasn't convinced me that negotiating the remainder of the plan will be smooth enough to represent a good use of our district's leadership time over the next year. Though we often reference that this plan has been in the works for 7 years, there remain significant questions, and part of what I've considered in my vote tonight is the strength of our collaboration to date, as a yes vote and a subsequent launch would lead to more collaboration. We've seen financial estimates vary significantly over time, even at an accelerated rate over the 3 months leading to this vote. In my professional life, if I see repeated wide variances in financial figures, it tells me that the team doesn't trust their own assumptions, or that those assumptions haven't yet been rigorously tested. The bar for approval here, in my view, is not only a strong belief in the guiding vision of the proposal, but a trust that these details will work out smoothly going forward. The rigor that has been applied to assumptions, to include funding decisions controlled by a third party that is headlined with $10 million but who is not committed to spending $10 million on this school, isn't strong enough for me to approve this proposal. Another concern is the plan for enrollment. The PHS proposal is attempting to serve a representative slice of SBS kids while focusing a unique educational model for a group of kids who need something non-traditional. I don't see how these two things square against each other, and the conceptual mismatch suggests an issue that's deeper than a year's worth of work will suss out. There's been a significant amount of time spent negotiating around the ownership of intellectual property, and I think that this has largely escaped the public's attention. Negotiation around what can students or teachers create while they're getting paid by Somerville tax dollars, how they own that creation, and how can they monetize it. In my eyes, this is a significant distraction from the educational plan. We've paid our lawyer and paid in district leadership time to negotiate on this point, and I struggle to understand how this helps our kids learn better. Time that we've spent negotiating this point, when each day has no more than 24 hours, therefore takes away from time we could have spent talking about equity or curriculum or other things on which we still have questions. In my eyes, the inclusion of this element represents a suboptimal use of all of our time and causes me to question the prioritization as we go forward. The Powderhouse Studios team is a team of great people. I've known them for quite some time and consider them friends, hopefully so after tonight. And I have and will continue to applaud them for their persistence. They have a bold idea that is seeking to serve kids in a way that a more bureaucratic, traditional, and highly regulated district struggles to do. But I will vote no tonight because the PHS team and our district leadership have agreed that the proposal should not start in fall of 2019, as the proposal in front of us states, and because I continue to have concerns. This isn't a vote against the idea of Powderhouse Studios and all that it represents, but this is a vote against the 61-page proposal in front of us tonight. Lastly, mine is not a vote against innovation. I hope that parents paying attention tonight continue to press the district for innovation. The data tell us that we are not serving all of our students equally, and we should be held accountable for this. When we're on the other side of this vote, if the proposal should not pass, and as chair of the Finance Subcommittee, I will be pushing the district and my colleagues to think outside the box on how we can incorporate positive elements of this proposal in the upcoming school year, hopefully in collaboration with the PHS team. I hope that parents who are disappointed with my vote tonight will share that disappointment with me, and then will partner with me to grow innovation within Somerville Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vitrell. I have Superintendent Skipper, then Mr. Green, and then we will go from there. Yes, sir. We have our attorney here, Mr. Mike Long. Could you speak to that question? Come to the podium, please, and introduce yourself.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Michael Long, counsel for the Somerville School Committee. Excuse me, Mr. Green. So are you suggesting that as a result of the change in the date, the plan as proposed in March of 2017 is not before the committee?
No, my question is actually, because of the plan is before us, is the innovation plan that was passed, when any proposed changes didn't have to be revoted by that innovation committee. So things like changing the date of an opening or any perhaps conditions or anything else that might be put out tonight would require a new vote of the innovation committee. That's my understanding of the law. Is that correct?
That is correct. So to flesh that out a bit, if there were reservations about the plan proposed, a vote may be in the negative, but could be sent back to the innovation committee with suggestions or requests to look at certain issues.
Does that answer your question? No follow? Okay, thank you very much. Superintendent Skipper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize in advance that my marks are a bit long, but this is probably the most serious deliberation for me since becoming superintendent. I don't have a formal role in the vote here tonight, but as the educational leader of the Somerville Public Schools, I know that my opinion is important to your decision, and so I prepared a written statement for the school committee, which I can circulate afterwards. I find tonight's decision on approving the Powder House Studios Innovation Plan and whether to support the proposal one of the most difficult decisions of my own career. At the heart of it lies two principles by which I have spent my entire career striving to achieve: equity of educational opportunity for all children and the responsible use of innovation as a powerful vehicle for achieving equity. I'd like to begin with a brief history about the proposal before you tonight. As I learned when I came into the district in 2015, the Powder House School, or what was then called Somerville STEAM Academy, had a history of controversy already surrounding it. Questions swirled as to whether it would be part of Somerville High School or a standalone school. How and at what cost would it be funded? What type of student would be attracted to attending it? Would the student body be truly representative of the Somerville Public Schools? And what the path forward for an approved innovation plan looked like were all already on the table. The project was stuck. At that time, there was no XQ grant for $10 million, and there was no approved agreement with the Somerville Teachers Association. There was a 270-page innovation plan that many stakeholders had trouble digesting and understanding in a way that they felt comfortable to support. But as I read the plan, having designed and opened a new school multiple times in my career, I saw gems of design and educational vision that I felt deserved an opportunity. And so I and some of my staff, under the direction of the school committee, began working with Alec Resnick to see what might be possible with STEAM Academy and the Somerville Public Schools. From 2015 until now, I can say with confidence that as a district, we have spent hundreds upon hundreds of hours, myself more than anyone, with the PHS team. Primarily Alec, and more recently Shauna Lynn. We spent $57,000 in legal fees with our district law firm, negotiating a successful MOA with Somerville Teachers Union, which was ratified in January of this year. We have continually tried to move PHS to a point where making it part of the Somerville Public Schools as an innovation school would be possible, while still satisfying the PHS's team's desire for fidelity to their original design. In 2016, both the district and Powder House each submitted a separate application to XQ for funding. The district to fund the new innovation education program for the new Somerville High School building, and Alec and his nonprofit Sprouts for their Powder House innovation plan. As it happened, the district proposal was not funded, and XQ awarded a $10 million grant to Sprouts to support a variety of activities, such as the development of a learning management system, a path for digital literacy in collaboration with the Graduate School of Education, as well as the development of Powder House Innovation School that could be integrated into the district. Because Somerville Public Schools was not part of designing or submitting that application, the only piece we were aware of and have continually worked on supporting has been the Powder House Studios School. There's no question in my mind, nor from my experience, that there are some beautiful, original, and valuable ideas in the Powder House Innovation Plan that are of interest to the district in positively impacting all students and worth continuing to pursue and implement. In fact, there are several initiatives within the Somerville Public Schools right now that have similar missions and values to the Powder House work. For instance, we are working on a project-based and expeditionary learning redesigns for both Somerville High and Full Circle Next Wave, supported by the Barr Foundation, or the concept of performance-based assessment that the district has been working toward with the MCIEA Consortium and Jack Snyder for the past 3 years, or the use of inquiry, coding, and makerspaces as they are being integrated into our K-5s and K-8s as powerful tools for student motivation and agency, or the development of programs such as PATH for special education students at the high school, or GOAL for our ELL students, as deeply personal support programs for students with the greatest need, programs that have lifted the graduation rate to an all-time high and the dropout rate to an all-time low. However, the decision before school committee tonight isn't the simple question of whether the creative ideas throughout the Powder House Innovation Plan are innovative or worth seeding and growing throughout the district. At least from my perspective, I believe they resoundingly are, and I hope for the opportunity to continue to work with the PHS team in various ways to do so. The question for me tonight that I need to give input on as the educational leader of this district is twofold. First, whether the Powder House Innovation Plan, which will lead to the formation of a standalone innovation school, is complete, detailed, and clear on how it will reach and serve a truly representative population of our district, students who are diverse in language, ethnicity, race, learning need, and income, using a financial model that is realistic and sustainable, and through methods that are transferable enough to benefit students and staff throughout SPS. And secondly, through a lens of equity, whether launching this standalone school for a small number of yet-to-be-identified students is the best investment of money and human capital to positively impact the broader system. To the first question, the Powder House Innovation Plan does a great job explaining high-level concepts such as project-based learning, flexible use of time and schedule, competency-based and portfolio assessment, and student agency. Frankly, it's these concepts that have kept many of us engaged in this process with PHS. However, at this final stage of approval, the high-level ideas of the plan have to come to the ground and in a practical and concrete way detail the specifics for prospective students, parents, staff, and policymakers. Elements such as a legally vetted enrollment algorithm that will lead to the assignment of a student body representative of SPS, a detailed model of how and what specialized services students on IEPs and English language learners will receive in this project-based flexible setting, a detailed plan with ample examples of curriculum mapped back, not just to Common Core, but to the Massachusetts learning standards, and the mechanism by which student progress toward those standards will be recorded and shared. A clear understanding of the lease terms and location, along with an approved safety plan that meets the standards of the district in this yet-to-be school location, and a number of yet-to-be-developed memorandums in areas where Powder House would vary from the current district policy to ensure stakeholders, including students and parents, know what is expected, are all examples of the details necessary to approve the plan. All of this work can certainly be done in a design year when there are no students, working in partnership with the various district departments. But the innovation plan is only complete when it reflects the results of that collaboration. Even as a standalone charter school, PHS would need to provide this level of detail to seek state authorization. Given that the plan before us tonight does not have that level of detail, and given that the Mass Innovation Law requires any substantial changes to the plan be brought back to the Innovation Committee, it would make sense that school committee would want and need the plan they're voting on to be as complete and coherent as possible in authorizing it. Only then would I, as the superintendent, the school committee, prospective parents, staff, and students, and the community know what they are actually saying yes to now and in the future. To the second issue of equity, I've learned in my career that to start any school is expensive, as you are creating something that does not yet exist from resources that were previously allocated to some other set of priorities. In this case, there was a $10 million grant that was given to the nonprofit Sprouts to launch Powder House Studios. As we've come to understand it, opening the school was just one element of a plan that included several other big deliverables by the PHS team that they'd need to allocate resources to. We have labored over various budget scenarios of how much the grant is actually available to operationalize the school, and how as a district and city we might invest in a way that doesn't deeply cut into our other schools or programs. The current budget anticipates local revenues totaling around $12.1 million over the next 6 years, and $3.7 million each following year. Investing at this level would require cuts to existing district schools and programs. For example, a budget gap that large would mean the district would have to consider cutting at least 20 teachers or counselor positions, eliminating all out-of-school time programs except community schools, which would impact more than 400 SPS students already involved in them, reducing embedded counseling service across all schools, of which there's over 200 that are receiving those services, et cetera, et cetera. This process would likely be difficult and painful, and felt particularly hard for students and staff at Somerville High and Full Circle. Alec and Shonalyn have been creative with us and have put forward scenarios that offer extensive additional fundraising and applying for a variety of state grants. Unfortunately, as creative as all of those ideas are, in making the commitment to authorize a new school, we can't base the decision on what-if scenarios. We have to have a concrete budget that assumes a realistic picture of our financial and legal obligations. Here in Somerville, we are blessed to have a community, a mayor, a city council, and a school committee that year after year puts the needs of the schools at the forefront of each budget cycle. While most districts struggle with cuts, our district has benefited from steady, healthy budgets that have allowed us to have the resources we need to educate our children and provide them with the academics, social and emotional supports, and access to opportunities they need to thrive. And yet, even with those steady, healthy budgets, the increased demand that we, like other districts, are seeing for more social, emotional, and mental health supports, universal access to quality birth, 3, and pre-K education, more specialized instruction to close achievement gaps for our ELL learners and students on IEPs, and the demand for quality out-of-school time opportunities, to name a few, stretches those budgets as far as they will go. So when it comes to whatever additional dollars we have each year, the role of innovation to create and expand offerings in programming, design, STEM, and the arts has to be done with intent and a sense of equity to positively impact as many of our students as possible. Therefore, unfortunately, in terms of the budget in PHS, there is no model to draw upon or realistic scenario I could give you in which we could redirect the $12 million needed without increasing class sizes dramatically, closing numerous classrooms, especially at the high school, and eliminating programs that our current 5,000 students rely on, not only to learn, but also to live. As someone who believes in and has championed the power of new ideas my whole career, it pains me deeply to not be able to problem solve this. In this case, the investment to create something that may only add an unknown amount of benefit to 2 to 3% of students at the expense of the remaining 97 to 98% is one I can't recommend at this time. My hope is that we continue to innovate as we've been doing successfully and responsibly with an eye toward programming and design that impacts and transforms our schools broadly and uses a lens of equity that Somerville has always embraced to continue to ensure that those students who need more can have it. In closing, I commend Alex, Shauna Lynn, and the PHS team for their tenacity and passion they have shown before I arrived and certainly since. I welcome continuing to work with them and to bring alive some of the ideas they have born for the benefit of the whole system. However, at this point in time, given the lack of the key details in the innovation plan and the vast amount of integration work that remains unresolved, and given the substantial district investment of time and dollars that would disproportionately impact my 5,000 students, in addition to the many staff who already work here, I can't offer my support for the proposed plan.
I have Mr. Green next, and oh, you wish just a point of clarification? Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion, comments from my colleagues? Ms. O'Sullivan?
Thank you. I also prepared a statement which I will read, and maybe try to summarize. So clearly there's a real interest in this community for innovation. People have spoken passionately about the shortcomings of their own school experience and or those of their kids or kids they care about, and see great potential in the idea of Powderhouse Studios to address these shortcomings. The ideals of project-based learning and real-world connection resonate. Our teachers' union has expressed support, and our superintendent and staff have made it clear that they are not afraid to innovate. My school committee colleagues, likewise, are eager to find new ways to break the mold in education. In my own experience as an educator in public schools and as a parent of 3 school-aged children, I see that many of the traditional ways of doing things may not be the most effective. Clearly, the interest and the need is there. I have witnessed an incredible amount of progress in Somerville Public Schools in the 10-plus years that my own kids have attended. That progress has come about from a targeted focus on high-quality instruction and experiences for kids, supports for students and families, attention to recruiting, developing, and retaining talented staff. The high school was in a very different place then. Today, not only is the high school undergoing a physical renovation, but a programmatic renovation as well, through exciting work with the Barr Foundation. Our school committee and district is focused on equity in an unprecedented way. I want to acknowledge all the many, many hours that have gone into this proposal by the applicants, our district staff, and council, the STA community members, and again, my school committee colleagues. In preparing for this vote, I have read and reread the Powderhouse Studios Innovation Plan multiple times, and much of the supporting documentation that we have received in the past 2 months. I have met with constituents, read and reread numerous emails. I have talked with a variety of educators, considered my own experience as an educator, and I've reviewed related research. For example, from the Buck Institute for Education, which has a fabulous website, you might say. In considering all of this, it has come down to me to 3 big questions. Is the model proposed in the innovation plan educationally sound? Is the model in the plan fiscally viable? And what impact would the school have if implemented within our district? For the first question, is the model proposed educationally sound? The proposed school model is very enticing with many solid ideas in the design that are worth pursuing, such as the view of learning as active construction of mental models, the emphasis on project-based learning, the incorporation of student voice and choice, the interdisciplinary work, and more planning time for teachers. In reviewing the materials, one question that kept coming up for me, however, was the role of the state learning standards. The original innovation plan stated that projects would be retrospectively back-mapped to the traditional academic standards, including but not limited to Common Core, ELA, and math. The graduation requirements had coverage of Common Core as one option to meet one of the 3 criteria, not required for all students. In Massachusetts, public schools are expected to follow the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks, which in math and ELA are similar to Common Core, but include other content areas as well. In my opinion, the design treats the standards as an afterthought, something to be considered after the work is done. The math domain in particular is narrowed to computation, or which is defined as representing ideas for and with machines, primarily through programming. This, to me, does not reflect an understanding of the depth, breadth, and complexity of the content standards, nor the central role that they should play in designing learning experiences. While subsequent documents gave standards more weight and suggested that there would be content that all students would experience, it's not clear how that would exist alongside a fundamental Powderhouse Studios principle of student voice and choice. My second concern is the lack of any defined curriculum. If the standards define the learning goals, the curriculum would describe the activities, tasks, and experiences that students would engage in to reach those goals. The idea of project-based learning describes the framework, but it doesn't tell us the important underlying components. In the section devoted to curriculum, the applicant describes the individualized learning plan system, which is a tool for managing documentation. It mentions partnerships and cross-registration with other educational institutions. These all may be important pieces, but they are not curriculum. The applicant has provided a few project samples, but I would expect a much more fully developed curriculum model after so many years in development. The model calls for teachers to develop projects based on their interest. I absolutely agree that teachers should be involved in curriculum development and refinement, but given the amount of time and resources it takes to develop curriculum, it is unrealistic to start a school with nearly a blank slate. Which brings me to my third concern regarding the educational model. Building curriculum from scratch not only takes a tremendous amount of resources and expertise, but also the understanding of how other people develop their understanding of the content. If teachers are to develop the curriculum, the learning experiences, they need to have not just the content knowledge, but also what's known as the pedagogical content knowledge, the integration of subject expertise and skilled teaching of that particular subject. The innovation plan, and more specifically, the language around the curriculum and the staffing, doesn't have the recognition of the importance of the pedagogical content knowledge that I would need to see. In addition, the staffing model includes 2 content specialists, one in ELA and one in math, for 80 students, overseeing many different projects. At full capacity, with 18 staff for 160 students, only 4 would be designated as content specialists. In addition to writing curriculum, staff will be, according to the innovation plan, participating in a wide variety of specialized training, mapping work onto a mixture of personal, professional, and academic goals, including traditional academic standards, developing their own systems of evaluation at least annually, regularly administering diagnostic academic tests based on the SAT suite and MCAS, and using those results to provide small group and one-on-one support, establishing an active outreach program by running in and after-school programs, summer and vacation camps, developing an extensive onboarding and professional development programming, developing community partnerships, vetting, training, logistics, and liaison infrastructure, researching, prototyping, and designing novel tools, materials, and approaches, and developing their own trauma-sensitive programming and professional development, and sharing administrative duties. These are all worthy activities included in the design with good intentions, but I have serious concerns about how PHS staff, even with a longer workday and longer school year, could effectively do all that. This aspect of the design seems unrealistically ambitious. All of these concerns around the educational model are, for me, not insignificant details to be worked out later. I believe they would have a real impact on student learning while at Powderhouse Studios and on student success post-Powderhouse Studios. Would students be able to successfully transfer to a more traditional high school? Would they be prepared for graduation and be college and career ready? My next concern, they're not nearly as long as that one. The next one is it financially sound? Does the proposed budget support the proposed model? The innovation plan does not have budget specifics, so my assessment of this question comes from budget materials that we received about a month ago. I appreciate the applicant's efforts to work with our district staff to adjust the proposed model so that it is more in line financially with the district's allocation of the per pupil amount. Designing and launching a new school requires a lot of resources, and I'm not confident that those are reflected in the budget. Changes have been proposed to the model, such as the reduction of youth advocates from 1 per cohort to 1 shared across 2 cohorts. Putting aside the question of whether changes like this need to go back to the Innovation Committee, the impact on the design needs to be articulated and considered. In addition, the budget numbers are built on the assumption that the maximum number of students, 40, would enroll in each cohort. If fewer enrolled, the per pupil allocation would be reduced. How would the school accommodate the reduced budget? Small schools are expensive to operate, in part because of these fixed costs and the overhead costs split among smaller numbers of students. Finally, this is not a proposal for an independent entity. It would become a Somerville public school and as such would have an impact on the rest of the system in potentially both positive and negative ways. It could be a force for change and allow Somerville public schools to develop a powerful new model that could be replicated on a smaller scale in other schools. But this possibility would come at a cost, to me, a very significant cost. District staff have already put in an enormous amount of time to try to make this work, which I believe is indicative of the challenges faced to develop a sound, viable model that would integrate into our public district. All of the above concerns I raise on the educational model would require substantial support from the district staff to develop, support that would need to be taken away from other initiatives. The school would have 18 staff. Where would those positions need to come from? Do we have the confidence that we would be able to devise an enrollment algorithm that would yield a representative student population in an equitable and legal way? These unanswered questions are, again, significant to me, taken in consideration with my concerns about the educational model and financial questions will prevent me from voting in favor of this. Our superintendent is one of the most, if not the most, determined educators I have ever met, with an amazing balance of aspiration, perseverance, and pragmatism. I know if this were approved, she would do everything under the sun to ensure that the enrolled students get a shot at a good education. But at what cost? I believe the cost is too high. This is not our path forward to innovation. We should be expanding authentic, project-based learning for all students, aligned with standards and with the work currently underway in the district. There are some very worthy ideas here, and hundreds upon thousands of hours invested that should not be for naught. There are other schools in the region that offer models of programs within schools that we could explore. Brookline High, for example, Wellesley High, Concord Carlisle High, all have similar programs embedded in their high schools. Some have argued that Powder House Studios needs to be a separate school, incubated away from the institutional pull of a traditional school. While I can understand that argument, I am more persuaded by the importance of keeping it within the high school as an option for all kids, rather than a separate entity. We need options, different approaches, and those approaches can exist within our schools. We need to stay focused on increasing effective teaching and learning, including project-based learning. In sum, we need innovation for all students.
Thank you, Ms. O'Sullivan. Ms. Palmer?
Through you, Chair, to the administration. We have received quite a bit of constituent communication on this topic, and we heard public testimony this evening that would suggest and stated quite boldly that the project is fully funded, and if it has a significant budget impact, what that impact would be. We heard your remarks earlier. If possible, to clarify, that seems like a pretty big disconnect. Is there any context that could be provided to help sort of bridge that gap?
Superintendent Skipper or Dr. Curley, would you like
Through
to
you,
speak?
Madam Chair, and I'll let Dr. Curley also weigh in. I think the easiest way to understand it is that is twofold. There's a $10 million XQ grant that a portion of that has been agreed upon, not the full amount, in writing by XQ. $1 million of it was already previously spent by the Powder House team, so that leaves $9 million, and of the $9 million, XQ in writing has committed to $7.7 million. The rest we have no commitment for. So using that, and that is what is in the document that we published on the web, we use that as the basis to calculate out what the school would cost. There was no detailed budget or staffing plan with the innovation plan after the MOA especially, and so we had to go back and calculate all of that with the Powder House team. So of the $18 million roughly cost and the XQ portion, that means that the Somerville Public Schools district allocation has to fill the rest. Because it's a new entity, it is not, you can't just pull it out of the air, it has to come from somewhere. And this is the part that I think sometimes can be confusing for the public. So if you have to pull $12 million or $12.1 million, that $12.1 million over the course of the 5 years is part of the budget already. And it's already sitting in classrooms and programs. So you therefore have to take that back in order to sustain the new entity. So it has to come from somewhere.
Does that answer your question? Do you have a follow-up question?
Dr. Curley, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. You've done a lot on the financial models.
We've heard from folks who say, but those are students that we are already educating or we would educate otherwise. So maybe just clarify.
Through you, Madam Chair. That's correct. However, they're sitting in, sometimes it's not as simple. Like, for instance, if you take out of a K-8, our 7th and 8th grade, you take 3 students out of each grade out, you can't take the teacher away. You still have to have that teacher. So it's not as simple as the dollars follow the student. In a weighted student formula, that's how it can be done, but you still run into the situation where when you're taking away not a full class, but a small number of students from a lot of different schools, or from Somerville High, or from Full Circle, it's not as clean as being able to take a full teaching position or a full counseling position. That person still needs to be able to serve the remaining students. So in a smaller district, it's more complex to do it, and in a smaller school, it's even harder because you're not taking a large volume of students.
Does that get to your question? Thank you very much. Other comments or questions, Mr. Green?
I actually have a series of questions, if that's all right. Actually, my first question through you to my colleagues, Ms. O'Sullivan and Dr. Ackman, actually. The superintendent in her remarks said to me something I think is actually a fairly bold statement, which is that, in her opinion, if this were a charter school, DESE would not approve it. My experience, usually, to be fair, usually crossing swords with DESE, not on this side, says that that's probably true. But I know that I have 2 colleagues on the committee who have worked with DESE, and I'd love to hear their thoughts on that particular point. In your opinion, you work with DESE staff, and If this were proposed to DESE as a charter school, would they get DESE's recommendation in the form it's currently in?
Dr. Ackerman, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. From my understanding of the charter proposals and DESE's process, it would not.
Mr. Sullivan, would you like to add to that?
I can. I did not work specifically in the charter school office, but I did have some interaction, and I would concur with that as well.
Thank you. Superintendent Skipper?
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify, I didn't say that it wouldn't be approved as a charter. What I said was that if it were applying as a charter, it would need to provide the level of detail that we are asking for here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions? Mayor Curtatone?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to, if nobody else is in line, I'll
Please, jump right in there.
don't rush to the mic now, okay? Thank you, Madam Chairperson, to you, the members of the committee, the public in attendance. Being here tonight reminds me why and what makes this city so special when you have parents and stakeholders advocating for investments and attention towards efforts to fight against hate and bias and anti-Semitism and racism, and young leaders in our schools seeking and advocating for more investments in college counseling services and the proposal we're considering tonight, and the advocates and activists and creators who are here pushing for it. I'm honored to be part of it, but as I'm honored, I would share some, I served on the city council, former board of Aldermen for 8 years, and on the school committee in that role as mayor. I've had to make a lot of tough calls and tough decisions. This one's probably the most painful one and the most frustrating at the same time, and I want to explain why. For the moment, from the first time I met Alec Resnick and his team and Shonalyn Duffy, I want to thank, and again, the Powder House team from the very first days of Sprout and the idea of the STEAM Academy. I was bought in 110%. I am still bought into what I consider an important trait to have in anyone to be innovative, and that is a passion for curiosity and a willingness to be abnormal. And they made me think in that way in terms of education through a lens or perspective I never thought before. And that was important. And for the last several years, engaging them, working with them, and maneuvering to this point tonight to try to make this dream and vision happen, and that which I truly believe in. But for the reasons, and I'll go through some of them, I don't want to go into detail, I want to speak more in terms of the values and what we're trying to accomplish, outlined by the superintendent and the more specific concerns regarding the substantive merits and composition of the proposal by my colleagues here. I will not be voting to support it, and I'll go into a little bit why. At the same time, I want to thank Alec and Shonalyn and the entire Powder House team for their forward, innovative thinking. And this is not a vote against, as been mentioned, our ideas and the innovation of proposal, but again, I think a vote for equity, and I'll explain why. I want to thank Superintendent Skipper and Jeff Curley and the entire administration from the school department who've put countless hours along with members of my administration working alongside and engage with the Powder House Studios team to try to make this a reality. I know the superintendent has tried harder than anyone else in this room to align the vision of this Powder House Studios proposal with the operational framework of the district, and her perspective and expertise has been really important to me. We are not afraid, obviously in this community or in the city administration, in this district, to be bold or abnormal or do innovative things. In fact, I think we've shown that we are committed to a vision of a system-wide excellence and equity that strives to bring such opportunities to every one of our students. And under the superintendent's stewardship on this board and working with the city council community, we've undertaken innovative initiatives, many similar to what is proposed in the Powder House Studios plan in our schools to help, again, all our students thrive. For example, we've heard about the high school redesign work with the Bar Foundation, which is exploring flexible scheduling and alternative credit-bearing opportunities for students. We've also heard about how we're expanding project-based learning and computational thinking opportunities in the middle grades and in the high school. And we certainly have a lot more we want to do and will do. We understand that I certainly do. I'm so inspired by the value of the Powder House Studios design, and we have embraced this team and worked with them for years to help it become a reality, again, which makes it so frustrating and so painful. And that's not the fault of anyone. I don't, while I'm frustrated and can't support this tonight, I don't consider it a failure because it certainly made me think differently about what my role and how we think about education, how we need to invest, and how we need to be more innovative, and with a focus on learning and how people learn differently. Again, to an extent I never thought of before. Somerville, again, is not about turning away from innovation. We want to embrace it. We're just committed to doing it in a way that can benefit all the kids in the district, and I know everyone here tonight, whether you're for or against the proposal, embraces that as well. After supporting this collaboration for years, again, it pains me that I don't see a sustainable and responsible path forward with the current plan for the reasons elaborated by the superintendent. Again, many of the concerns that the members of my colleagues in the school committee have enlightened me towards. But there are, as have been mentioned, many valuable, innovative ideas that are embedded in this proposal that I hope and I know we'll take a deeper dive and look on. And my commitment has always been, and always have, to support that financially as an advocate for education as we bring those innovative proposals forward. We're not an affluent community, but we have more resources we've had in the past. At the same time, we need to allocate those resources, as we've all heard, I think, the value term, in an equitable, responsible way. I believe that is the value lens at the end of the day, which steers me to not be able to support this tonight. We have committed to evaluating all new investments through an equity lens, and candidly, we still obviously have inequity in this community, and we're striving hard and investing strongly and boldly to close in that gap. My concern is that gap will widen, as has been impressed upon me in the debate and deliberation here. And again, we're going to invest in the things that have the broadest impact and support those with the greatest needs, which I know everyone in this community supports alongside me. I want to thank, first and foremost, the proponents of the proposal and the advocates and activists who have fought for it, who, again, have been successful in opening my eyes and others on this committee to other things we might want to invest in, or how we think about innovation. The members of the school committee and the city council who've chimed in. The school committee has done more than its due diligence in evaluating the merits of what is being debated and discussed and voted on tonight, and the superintendent and her team. You have my commitment as one member of this committee and as the chief executive of the city that I'll work alongside with you, and I hope that some sort of partnership still exists between the Powder House Studios team in this city, because we have a lot to learn from them. They have certainly inspired me, and I know many across this community, and I thank them. I know they're disappointed in my position, and many people will be as well, but I'm committed to chase innovation harder and as abnormal as anyone in this room, and I promise and commit myself to work alongside everyone in this community to do so, but in a very informative and equitable way. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Mayor, for those remarks. I have Mr. Green.
Thank you. So I didn't do a prepared statement because my hope was up until last minute that I would hear something that would give me a different place to be than where I woke up this morning. But instead what I heard earlier today in our education programs meeting was the number 5%. 5% of the English language learners at the Healy School are meeting expectations on the MCAS. As I mentioned when I've asked for this, as a district, we are still frankly failing way too many of our black and brown students, and we're failing them well before high school. And when I think about where Somerville's biggest failing is, as much as Somerville High School, like every high school in America, needs work, needs improvement, needs innovation, that's not where Somerville is currently falling down. So I struggle, and I have been struggling to come up with some way I can justify this proposal as a real way to address deep inequities in our system. I agree with the speaker who came up in favor of the program when he said equity costs money. It absolutely costs money. We've heard some concrete examples tonight. We are woefully underserving our high school students when it comes to college admissions, which requires staffing, which requires money. Again, 5% of Healy's ELL students tested, and obviously people know who my day job, I have skepticism about using MCAS as the all and end all marker, but it does speak to real deep inequities in our service of ELL, which fortunately, thanks to the recent changes in state law, we have opportunities to think about in new and different ways, which comes to my real problem. Frankly, if I thought that this proposal would address meaningfully address achievement gaps and opportunity gaps, the money would not hinder me. But what is a challenge for me is the district's bandwidth. Last year, when I had the honor of serving as chair of this body, the superintendent went on leave for 6 weeks for medical reasons, which probably should have been 2 months, or if not longer, but frankly, we didn't have the bandwidth to spare her. And in that time, Dr. Abeda, Dr. Curley in his role as a superintendent fellow, Rich Malillo, at the time, Patty Marks, the team who was here did an admirable, amazing job of running a district in the superintendent's absence. But what became abundantly clear to me as chair was how there was no capacity in the system to do anything more than run the system on a day-to-day basis. The biggest limitation facing Somerville Public Schools' ability to innovate, ability to move the needle, is not money, it's time and mental energy. And the reality is, my estimate is that on any given day, about 85% of the district energy is spent running the district on a day-to-day basis. About 13% of it is spent putting out fires that, if we're doing our job properly, the people in this room will never hear about, but are constantly here, as is the case in any district where we have high needs population, students in crisis, students with trauma. That leaves 2% of a calculated $70 to $100 million enterprise being really be able to spend time thinking about strategic improvements. Which to me says that if we were to approve a plan that is, while what is here I love, but it is at best half complete, that is what we will be spending that 2% of our time, if not more so, on. And so I have to be convinced that this is the thing that we can do tomorrow that will most address what for me is the Somerville Public Schools' biggest shortcoming, which are the inequities in our outcomes. I am not convinced of that. This is personally painful for me to say. For those of you who don't know, I didn't finish high school. I left high school because it didn't work for me. I am, as I've talked with many of the people in this room, have said, one of my guiding principles when I do this work is, if we were designing an education system today, we know that it wouldn't look anything like what we've got. I am not afraid to do big, bold, scary, radical things to upend how we educate our students. My day job is to push for performance-based assessments nationwide and to think through holistic, equitable assessments. I love those ideas, but I can't justify pushing those ideas for 40 students. I have to figure out ways to push them for 5,000 students. And the fact is, when we've done that, the results haven't been, well, frankly, in the most direct case, in the case of the Healy, we don't know the results. We didn't get them. But I want to talk about really renovating school, not creating a carve-out that will lead to, when I think of the things that would go, I can't imagine that cutting out one of the strands in the middle school to Healy wouldn't be one of the things that would go, which means higher class sizes in a vulnerable school that is already struggling to serve all students equally. I think of gutting what has been, to me, my mind, the most powerful thing we have done to address equity since on the High School Committee is the work we've done to expand out-of-school time opportunities in a way that isn't pay to play like it is in most districts in the Commonwealth and the country. like, I know these things aren't shiny baubles, and I get, because as I'm fond of saying, I get it. I have aunts and uncles who have high school diplomas issued by schools that were illiterate to their 40s. I get the distrust. It's deserved, frankly. I get the skepticism. But if the only reason I can give to do something that only affects, at best, 20 students of color, that's if the proposed algorithm were to stand legal scrutiny, which, and again, in my quest to find a way to vote yes, I asked a couple of colleagues of mine who work for national civil rights groups if this was a policy they would even feel comfortable bringing to the courts, and they were like, no, it'd be DOA. So even if we were to find a lottery that actually was to address and make this representative of the population, that'd be 20 students. I can't find a way to say that serving those 20 students is worth the cost in time and energy, and the fact that we are basically giving up on doing any meaningful innovations for 5 years for the other 5,880 students in the district. I just can't do it.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Anyone else? Doctor, did you want to speak, or? Go right ahead, and then I will ask you to take the podium, please.
So first I would like to thank the district and the Powder House team for the hours upon hours of hard work that was put into this proposal. Even since I've been here since the beginning of last year, it has been quite a lot. So I would like to say I echo each of my colleagues' well thought out and eloquently stated points, as well as the concerns that Superintendent Skipper brought up. I'm in Ward 1, and each of the constituents who contacted me about Powder House did so as a proponent of educational innovation, as am I. It's one of the reasons, actually, that I ran for school committee. But each of the constituents who took the time to contact me about Powder House, save the ones that are actually present tonight, asked me to vote against the proposal, largely due to concerns similar to those that have been outlined tonight. As such, that's my plan.
For that, I'm going to speak, so you will take the podium.
Recognize Ms. Norman.
Thank you. I'm not going to cover all the points that my colleagues have so elegantly covered, and I don't have a big statement prepared. I'm going to speak about my experience with the Powder House, and my experience with it goes back to STEAM. I met Alec Resnick 2012. It was before I ran, and he had 260 pages, and I read it, and I loved it, and I read it again. And then I went through the bibliography, and I read a lot of that. And so I can say this is a group of people who are committed to scholarship and to learning and to asking questions, and when they don't know something, to digging in and finding people who know and learn more. I mean, when I said, go talk to Mass Advocates for Children, they did that. Find Tom Hare, they did that. I've been very impressed with that over the years. When I was elected to school committee, I took multiple votes to continue to encourage then Superintendent Parentazzi and Superintendent Mary Skipper to keep working on this, because I do believe in innovation, and I do believe that there are students in our system that aren't being served by the current models. I was really enthusiastic. In 2016, I was part of the second iteration of the Innovation Committee, and I went into that process. I think we started meeting in November, fully expecting to vote yes, fully expecting. On March 9th, 2017, I wound up voting no, and if someone had said to me that in 5 months you would vote no, I would have said they were out of their mind, because I had spent so much time talking with the educators in Powder House, learning more about the Somerville school system, seeing where the gaps were, knowing a lot of complicated kids who were struggling to get through a traditional day. And frankly, it took a lot of soul searching, many sleepless nights, and some tears. And I voted no because there wasn't a full enough plan. I voted no because this isn't just an idea that we're voting on, but it was a school. And I could count votes. I knew it was going to pass and that I would get to see it again as a school committee member, but I couldn't vote yes at that time. And 2 years later, I struggle with some of the same questions, where philosophically I agree, and yet I don't see a plan. If I look at the special education plan and the supplementary information that we were given, and we've been given a lot, and I've read a lot, the special education plan isn't a plan, it's a literature review. And while that demonstrates a real interest and a commitment to learning about things that you don't know about by the Powder House staff, it is not a plan. And when families have asked me, what would the day be like? How would they learn? How would I know? And when, as Ms. O'Sullivan so eloquently spoke to, we can't map projects back on the standards, I can't credibly say, yes, your student will be making progress. Could I credibly say your student might be having a different experience and it might be a great experience? Yes, but I couldn't credibly say, how will your student be making adequate academic progress? And at the end of the day, we're a school system, and that's the business we're in. I've also struggled very hard between the idea of innovation and carve-outs and being part of the district. And I think there's a lot of inherent conflict. Reading through, when I read something, and this is from the Powder House, specifying the design and development of the Powder House Studios Operation Manual, last revised on September 5th, September 5th, 2017, and I read something that says, and this is a direct quote from their manual, "For Powder House to survive and evolve as our mission requires us to, our differences must survive and evolve the pressures of a public schools district in Massachusetts in 2017. We believe these pressures are the most substantial existential threat to our work." Let me read that again. We believe these pressures are the most substantial and existential threat to our work. So when we're talking about an innovation school, it's about the innovation at that school, but then how does it get scaled up district-wide? And I think there's a deep conflict if the district is seen as an existential threat to the work. And we, as school committee members, we think about individual students, we hear from families, we get to know individual students, and they bring us great joy, but we also have to think about it system-wide, 5,000 kids. And I am saddened and frustrated that 2 years later, I have almost all the same questions that I had. And I can't support this. When I think about the potential of this project, this school, this idea, I love it and I get very excited, but the plans aren't there, the details aren't there. When we get a lease that has fully 12 pages redacted plus partial pages, I can't sign on to that. I have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility with taxpayers' money. I don't know what we're signing on to. And that's, I can't do that when I know other places that we can be spending money. So I have spent a lot of time and a lot of support and a lot of enthusiasm for this idea. And I commend the people for bringing the Powder House staff, especially, I've spent a lot of time with Alec over the years. My kid was at the Healy when they were doing their year-long residency. I've seen it in action, and even then, I can't support it. There is not enough detail, not enough, what is it really gonna look like? And there's too many questions for me to trust kids to this project, and I hope we were able to take a lot of the ideas and the innovation throughout the district. But it's disappointing that 2 years later, I still have the same list of questions. Thank you. Madam President Ballantyne, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I am a parent of 2 daughters. So far, I've been 18 years in the Somerville public school system, and I have another 7.5 to go. During that, you're close to me, huh? During that time, I've seen a lot of change. I would say when my first daughter was in the school, it was after-school programming and not enough of it. Many things have changed, and the amount of offerings and opportunities in the after-school program has been wonderful. So that's just one example, but I've seen change. So, and I've seen involvement. I thank the parents and the community for their involvement in wanting the best for our children, and certainly by giving more learning options. I'm going to abridge some of my comments because they've already been said, so I'm going to say I agree with some of the commentary from my colleagues about not having enough information about clarity on the intellectual property, a curriculum not being mapped back in a clear way to the Common Core, enrollment algorithms, and clarity and detail on a budget, which was supposed to be submitted with the plan, because what we're voting on this evening is the 61-page plan. I value innovation incredibly, and I want to say is I'm excited about some of the things, as I've seen in my first 18 years, that are happening right now in the Somerville Public Schools. You know, the career and technical education, the CTE up at the high school is amazing. It's project-based learning. It's everything that has been asked for in this plan, and it offers opportunities in advanced manufacturing and engineering, architectural design and pre-engineering, graphic design, visual arts, metal fabrication, and certainly, you know, automotive, child development, construction, technical education, culinary arts, cosmetology, dental assistance. And they do that similar to what has been explained to us by Powderhouse Studios they would like to do on other subject matters. At the same time, our administration and teachers up at the Somerville High School are working on a new education model, the plan for a new secondary school model that will help students develop the full range of competencies necessary for a successful transition to college and career in today's global economy and society. These competencies can be developed through a variety of opportunities in a wider learning ecosystem comprised of organizations and institutions beyond their traditional high school walls through internships and work. It puts students at the center of a flexible and evolving learning experience that builds on students' creativity, individuality, and curiosity through adaptable pathways that connect students to the real world as a standard practice and not an add-on. And ultimately, as an elected official right now, is the staff that we have at the Somerville Public Schools, administration and the teachers. They're the ones that would have to implement the Powderhouse School. I have to respect, because I do not
come from an education background, is I have to respect Superintendent Skipper, who we hired to lead our school system, and her staff, who have reviewed the plan and don't believe in their professional opinion the plan before us will get us to a standalone school. So I will support her recommendation and reasoning as to why this plan is not ready for a standalone school. And those reasonings that I heard are: the plan before us lacks a concrete path to detail the specifics for prospective students, parents, staff, and policymakers, and the innovation law requires that. And that the plan will disproportionately focus funding and human resources towards a small number of students. So for those reasons, I will not be supporting the plan this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Patone?
Through you, Chair Norman. First, thank you to my colleagues and to the superintendent and her staff. All these comments tonight were incredibly thoughtful. I've spoken a lot in previous meetings. I made a statement in the previous meeting. I posted a letter to the editor in the Somerville newspaper. I think my voice is out there, but I will kind of try to summarize because I don't want to keep us all here. Like I said, I want to thank the district staff, my colleagues, the members of the community that have shared their thoughts. This is the most I've ever heard from the community. Incredibly exciting, in some ways also painful, because I was holding an idea that my heart was very passionate about, but my head could not resolve. And I've been saying this for a while, and until today, still wanting to figure out what was an answer, how could we do this. I've seen the superintendent's staff continuing to work over the last 2 months, trying to find out if there was a place that they could come to terms and resolve this so diligently. But I also, appreciate the bravery in being very frank about the impact to the district, and being faced to receive criticism through this process, because it's easy to put a blanket on saying that the district doesn't support innovation or Somerville is somehow behind the times, and I have to say that that is absolutely wrong. And if this could have been done, it would have been done, and we would have gotten there. So I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm disappointed where we are, and as school committee members, we've studied, listened, and learned over the last few months and tried to make this happen, and years. I'm bought into the idea, but I don't have confidence in the plan. Most significantly, I'm not comfortable with the amount of resources necessary to bring the plan to fruition. And frankly, it's less money, but more the focus and effort necessary from the district to really realize a plan that is not fleshed out. Since the award of the Execute grant was made, almost $1 million have been spent. The MOA with this STA has been complete, and I commend everyone working on that. We have been told work on the learning information system has progressed, but I haven't seen anything about that. A lease and plans for development of space has been secured, again shared. The lease has been shared but redacted. But primarily, the innovation plan itself is the same as it was originally approved of 2 years ago. And I've reread the innovation plan again over this past weekend, and again, I was excited, but also full of more questions and concerns. So to make it short, I cannot support this plan as it's written, and I'm going to have to support the superintendent or recommendation not to pursue Powderhouse Studios as an innovation school in the Somerville Public Schools District.
Thank you. Ms. Palmer?
Through the chair, I have a couple more clarifying questions to the administration. I know that there are a lot of people in this room who are here to support this proposal. Undoubtedly, there was some new information that you may have heard, and there's a lot of information, a lot of weeds, but some important pieces that have surfaced, and I want to make sure are clear. The first is the school opening date. The plan that we're deliberating on tonight indicates August 2019. My colleague, Mr. Green, asked an earlier question about what the implications for tonight's vote. Can the administration clarify why this opening was agreed upon the delays. And in terms of the commitment from from XQ, excuse me, the funder, and the 7.7 million that you had landed on, is that agreed upon? So would that financially be part of if we were to move forward?
Through you, Madam Chair, so I think at the last presentation that Alec and Resnick and Shauna Lynn gave to the school committee, the Powder House team indicated that they agreed with our assessment that given all of the things that we've talked about that are not yet complete, that to put students into a school would not be responsible. And so it was agreed upon that 2019 would not be a year that we could have for student entrance. In terms of the 7.7 million, we do have in writing from XQ, that is the document that we have published. That is a budget we constructed because there wasn't a budget prior. And so that is been agreed upon by XQ for the 7.7 million. I do not believe we yet have in writing from XQ, we have a verbal agreement through Mr. Resnick that they would agree to the 0 year, to the 2020 delayed start. The other models that have floated out there, which we have not put out, have ranged with having less students in the school, as well as the additional possibilities for other kinds of fundraising. But none of that has been, it's not committed to. We haven't been able to. We did not float those, nor do we have any commitment from DESE or any of the other entities for the proposed fundraising. We also, in terms of so if $1 million has been spent in Powder House's budget and 7.7 has been committed, we do not have anything, nor has it been discussed with XQ or in writing how the remainder 1.3 would be spent.
A follow-up question, or did that satisfy?
I have a second question.
Please.
In terms of clarification on the enrollment piece, because I mean, that has surfaced previously, concerns around it. We've been advised as a school committee that the proposed algorithm would not hold up in court, that it's unconstitutional, illegal, and a huge part of this proposed school is that it would reflect the demographics of the school district, racially, socioeconomically, English language learners, and special education. So can you just explain that piece and where that would leave the school?
So, I mean, the information that is available on the proposed enrollment algorithm is the same information that was testified to in the last public hearing. As part of the innovation plan, as you can read, there is a proposed algorithm that it's not detailed, but it says there is one, and that it would yield a commitment to a true representation of the Somerville Public Schools. We have asked for that we have asked for both the algorithm and for a legal opinion on the qualifiers of that algorithm. We asked from our counsel, which our counsel did provide to school committee in writing what his legal opinion was, and I'm sure he could, he's here tonight, so he could also indicate that. We also asked Powder House to have their legal team that had been working on the algorithm and the enrollment qualifiers to put forward a legal opinion, which they did, which we have also provided to you. But it's not a legal opinion. It is more that, in theory, this could be done. But our counsel has reviewed that and does not believe that the qualifiers listed would pass muster. So, Attorney Long is here if you would like him to speak to it.
Mr. Long, could you speak to that question, please? Thank you.
Chair, and through you to Ms. Palmer. The algorithm is driven by some mathematical assumptions that, as I tried to play it out, suggest that although the purpose is very careful and is intended to ensure a diverse student body, if you apply the algorithm, you end up with what to me looks like a quota system. And the way the courts are interpreting admissions and enrollment and employment policies these days, when you have a result of a policy which is established mathematically, I think it's very difficult to avoid the conclusion that it's a quota, no matter how well-intended the policy is. And the memorandum that I had distributed through Superintendent Skipper and Mr. Curley back at the end of February talked a little bit about various OCR, Office of Civil Rights rulings that had made clear that diversity is an acceptable, desirable element, but that in crafting a formula, the OCR rulings use terms like a slight advantage, and those terms are soft terms, whereas the mathematical certainty of this particular algorithm, in my view, is more concrete than a slight advantage or additional consideration that might result from a general reference to diversity as a desirable trait.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions while we have Mr. Long at the mic? No. Thank you very much. Oh, no. All right. Okay. I have Mr. Futrell and then Mr. Green.
Through the chair, so we've all gone around and kind of weighed in on how folks will vote, or at least where they're at right now. I expect that community members who are excited about this proposal will then come to us and say, what next? And I think that the answer will, as a school committee member myself, what I can say is, I want to ensure that innovation is represented in our upcoming budget, both programmatically, financially, and otherwise, as well as equity and all the other things we're committed to. But one of the things that I want to point out while we have this audience is there is a relationship between XQ, a funder, who has given $10 million to Powderhouse Studios, a 501c3 nonprofit, who has proposed a school in Somerville Public Schools. So the distinction I'm trying to make here is XQ, the funder, has not given any money to Somerville Public Schools. They have given money to 501c3, who has then collaborated with Somerville Public Schools to create a thing that would be under Somerville Public Schools. My question through the chairwoman to the superintendent is, can you elaborate on what our relationship is with XQ to date?
Through Madam Chair. So this grant was a little bit unusual to start in that while one of the outcomes for Powderhouse was to create a school that could be integrated into the district, there was no direct relationship with the district. The first time that I was able to speak with XQ directly was a little over a year ago, and that was because I took it upon myself to contact them. So that in and of itself has created a bit of a, it's difficult because you can't, as you're going to own the school, but yet you don't have a direct method to have communication with the entity. Since then, XQ has visited once and had a meeting with us, and then I would say there's probably been a total of, in a year, 3 phone calls. The budget in terms of the XQ side, we've had nothing to do with the dollars. So there's been no transference of dollars from the private fund to our district. That includes the legal fees, which we paid for out of the Somerville Public Schools budget. That includes all staff time. None of that was compensated for over the course of the last 18 months, or since the grant was given.
A follow-up, Mr. Futrell?
Yep, very briefly. So with no formal, again, I'm trying to get at what are possibilities going forward. The key point here, I think, is that there's no formal relationship between XQ and Somerville Public Schools. And so for community members who want to think about what happens next, there's probably a role to play, of course, with your elected representatives in asking us, all right, what now? Which is a separate relationship from any external entity that might want to revise or amend a proposal or do anything differently. That's all.
Superintendent Skipper?
Through Madam Chair, there's 2 other points I want to add. When the grant was initially given in 2016, we found out through the PHS team, and the way the grant was set up was that they did like a celebration, kind of like surprise thing for PHS. We found out about it, and then the mayor and I were actually invited to a kickoff event, which happened. We attended that. There was no connection at that point with who from XQ we would be communicating with. XQ shortly after that did an event that some people might have attended, which was down in David Square, and that was like a little bit of a kick, actually not David Square, I forget, it was one of the
It was in
squares.
Seven Hills Park in
Seven
Davis
Hills,
Square.
yeah. And so there was like a bit of a kickoff there, and again, our role was only to have people come to it. But beyond that, that was the last meaningful communication with XQ. We would welcome the opportunity, obviously, with a funder to have it. The structure of it, and I think as was made clear in our conference calls with XQ, their role, and they don't want the role to be that of governance. So their role is not part of that. They are the funder. And so this being this is the only in-district innovation plan that they have supported. The rest would be standalones, charters out of the innovation grant, and/or big, large schools that are not part of the district in the same way. So this was really their integrated district project.
Thank you. Is this related to, no, and then I have Ms. Batone and then Ms. Palmer?
Through you, Chair Norman, to the superintendent. Just to close on what Mr. Futrell spoke about, my understanding with the innovation statute is that if through this process the approval is withheld, or if we choose not to approve it, the Innovation Planning Committee may revise the plan and submit the revised plan to the school committee for a subsequent vote. I just want to make sure that that is clear. I'm not making any kind of agency to do one thing or another, but that is part of the innovation statute, so that is an opportunity.
I'm going to have Mr. Long speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Batone. Section M of the law states that if approval is not obtained, that is by the school committee, an innovation plan committee may revise the innovation plan and submit the revised plan to the school committee for a subsequent vote.
Does that, okay. Ms.
I
Palmer?
just wanted to make sure everyone knew that.
Yes, that is a helpful point. Thank you for raising it. Ms. Palmer?
I was hoping to be able to speak and just share my thoughts, but I did prepare comments as well in case I got too emotional, and I have to admit I'm feeling a little emotional, so I'm going to get through this without being too duplicative of what my colleagues have already said, because I do feel like so much has already been said that I agree with. But I want to highlight a couple of things, and first I want to read for the record the ideas that I really love about this plan and that I sincerely hope and believe that we will implement over the long term in all of our schools, particularly at our new high school coming online. The concept of an individualized learning plan for all students, flexible schedule, project-based learning that's meaningful, hard, deep, real, and honest, student-centered learning, depth over breadth, large unbroken blocks of time for learning, as other colleagues and the mayor has referenced, a day starting at a reasonable hour for teenagers. There's an hour for lunch. It feels more humane and in line with the current brain science, suggesting acute harm to teens due to lack of sleep. We know depression and anxiety is rampant in our teenage population. Year-round schooling is an option, extended day learning. As we've heard tonight from our attorney and superintendent, the concerns around the weighted lottery, the current proposal is unconstitutional. Without a replacement, the plan is not viable. I've heard from some constituents that it would be worth risking a lawsuit over. I don't agree. I don't think we'd prevail, and I don't think that's a sound use of our precious and limited district funds. Even if the school were somehow to enroll a majority Black and brown students, there's nothing inherent in the plan before us that would suggest its opening would translate into our district doing a better job at serving those populations of students. And yes, small class sizes and teacher-student ratios are incredibly helpful to students and teachers. We heard from a number of constituents on that point. But how is it equitable to offer this to 30 or 40 students, or even 140 if the school were to become fully enrolled, and not to all students in our district? What would we say to the waitlisted students who also want small class sizes and more individualized learning? Those are not concepts that need opportunities to be sandboxed. We all know we get better educational outcomes with smaller class sizes. And if the consequence of opening the school would likely lead to larger class sizes for the rest of our district, as we heard tonight, how would we reconcile that? I've heard proponents say that this new school is cost neutral or it could even save the district money. That's just not the financial reality here. I sincerely would love it to be, but it's not. The principal difference between being a mother and believing this proposed school might work for my own high-needs special education student at some point in his future and being an elected member of this school committee is that we're charged to make hard decisions to do what's best for all students while remaining fiscally accountable to the taxpayers of our city. And I agree that many have said tonight equity is a huge issue in our district, and it's one that we as a body have collectively decided we must take steps to concretely address. It's not enough to just talk about it not being okay, that the educational outcomes for our Black and brown students are not equal to those of our white students, and I agree that equity can't wait and that it costs money. And it's certainly seductive to be presented with a plan with lots of good ideas, and know that the applicant, and I believe the applicant, sincerely wishes to make equity one of the school's primary goals. But wishing something does not make it true. If it did, then I believe our district would not be grappling with the ongoing equity concerns we have. I know my colleagues and I, and certainly the district leadership, also care deeply about all children in our district and providing the best educational outcomes for all, and yet we continue to fall short, particularly for certain populations of students. And I know that our educational leader, Superintendent Skipper, has spent hundreds of hours one-on-one with the applicant trying to turn this plan into one we could approve today. As my colleagues have said, it's hard that we cannot do that. But what it has demonstrated to me is that we have a district leadership willing to pull out all the stops to continue to improve our systems and create new opportunities that are best for students and their learning. And I do understand the instinct of families who are passionate about the ideas in the proposal to want to grant a leap of faith to the applicant that all can or will be worked out once the proposal is approved and before the school opens for kids. You want this opportunity for your kid. You're willing to take the risk. You want this opportunity because you think it will be good for all kids and for public education in general. And you're desperate for more innovation in our schools. And I've heard that reflected across the room tonight. And believe me, I hear you. That's why I ran for school committee. I want to see so much change. I want to see it happening so fast. While we're doing so many great things, there's so much we could and should be doing, and change comes at such a slow pace. But that, as we have said, is not the question before us tonight. It's not a problem of being risk averse or opposed to innovation or not wanting to think outside the box. This is a statutory question on school committee. We're required to deliberate and vote on the substance included in the 61-page plan that was submitted to us. As much as we might want to, we simply can't substitute goodwill or best intentions for lack of concrete, fleshed out details. Therefore, it is my intention to vote to withhold approval on the plan at this time. We did hear from our attorney that, if appropriate, the applicant could at a later date request a reconvening of the Innovation Planning Committee, revise the plan, and submit that revised plan to the school committee for a subsequent vote. And I know that this is deeply disappointing to many of you in the room, and certainly many that we heard from who could not make it tonight, though it is also a big relief to many others that we heard from. And regardless of tonight's vote, I am sincerely impressed and inspired by everyone who came here tonight and who have reached out to us in all the ways over the last few months. And I'm incredibly grateful to the applicant team who's worked tirelessly over the last many years to try to bring their ideas to life for our students, and to our district leadership who have really sunk their heart and soul into this process, while at the same time, as my colleague Green alluded to, continuing to juggle the day-to-day operations of our existing schools and creating a cohesive district vision as we move forward. So I just want to say that I am so grateful for the vibrant community we have who care deeply about the quality education of our children here in Somerville, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Anyone? Superintendent, any further remarks?
No, Chair.
Okay. So there is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Palmer, and I would like to ask for a roll call vote.
The motion was to approve.
Thank you. It's been a long and complicated night. Yes. The motion is to take a final vote on the authorization of the March 9th, 2017 Powder House Studios Innovation Plan. Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
Ms. Palmer, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Futrell, how do you vote?
No.
Madam President Ballantyne, how do you vote?
No.
Mayor Curtatone, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Green, how do you vote?
No.
Ms. O'Sullivan, how do you vote?
No.
Ms. Patone, how do you vote?
No.
Dr. Ackman, how do you vote?
No.
Ms. Norman, how do you vote?
No.
Motion fails.
Okay. I think now is time to move on with the business of the district. And Superintendent, would you like to resume your report with the personnel report? Would you like to move it to the next?
Actually, my report is concluded for tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to do one or two of the subcommittee reports because of the thoroughness of this process, they're mounting. So, Ms. O'Sullivan, would you be prepared to, for the school committee meeting of the Education Programs and Instruction Committee of the Whole from January 28th to report out? Thank you.
Okay. The Ed Programs and Instruction Committee of the Whole held a meeting on January 28th. Called the meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. There was one topic on the agenda, the Brown School Improvement Plan. The Brown School staff started the presentation by sharing several positive updates, including the DESE designation as a Mass School of Recognition in 2018, the high percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations on MCAS, and various curriculum activities taking place. However, although overall in mathematics, 73% of students in grades 3 through 5 were meeting or exceeding expectations, gaps between subgroups exist. These gaps are the academic focus of the school's improvement plan. School staff presented strategies implemented so far to address these gaps, including providing targeted supports to individual students. Going forward, the school plans to take steps to understand the student's experience in school by examining policies and practices from the student's point of view and developing success plans for each child. In addition to the academic focus, the school's improvement plan also includes a student wellness focus, specifically on reducing the prevalence of student anxiety. School staff noticed an increase in the percentage of 504 and special education referrals for social emotional concerns over the past 3 years and have developed preliminary next steps to support student wellness. These steps include using student insights to ensure classrooms have appropriate amounts of support, implementing mindfulness techniques, and making modifications to classrooms to create more calming spaces. With no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 7:00 p.m.
Move to approve.
There is a move.
Second.
Wait, Dr. Ackman, you made the motion and Mr. Futrell seconded?
I seconded.
You
Can I
seconded.
second it?
I'm going to go with Dr. Ackman approving and Mr. Sullivan seconding. Is there any further discussion? What? Mr. Green?
Just a minor edit. There's no E at the end of my last name.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Sure
okay.
you don't want one?
I'm actually pretty confident on that point.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of accepting that report?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion is accepted. I think we're going to do one more just because we have a, did you want to? Okay. We have a little bit of a backlog. Ms. Palmer, would you report out on the?
Happy to.
Thank you.
Meeting minutes and a report from the March 11th Rules Subcommittee. The meeting was called to order by myself at 6 p.m. Attendees were myself, Ms. Patone, Mr. Futrell, Dr. Curley, and resident Kristen Strezzo. We reviewed the following agenda items: public comment, sexual harassment, controlled choice, online fundraising, all existing policies for review. Specifically under public comment, the committee wished to remind all members and the chair of BEDH policy paragraph 1, that the length of public comment will ordinarily be 20 minutes in length unless otherwise determined by the chair or majority of the school committee. As we saw this evening employed by the chair, we went over a little bit, but recognizing that the intent behind the creation of that public comment was to both balance our desire to hear from the public and best utilize our limited group meeting time for necessary business. So we then, based on recent experience with public comment, deliberated on two primary issues. The first is the question of non-residents not permitted under current policy to present a public comment. This came up recently when many of our SPS teachers came with their union leadership to speak, but were told they could not because they were not Somerville residents. The subcommittee discussed this at some length and agreed that non-resident employees, both district and city, have appropriate existing channels to air grievances and share their comments through existing chains of command and their unions and collective bargaining agreements. The subcommittee does not wish to complicate or undermine those existing channels. Residents also, we believe, appropriately get priority here because they are the taxpayers to whom we are accountable, and we have limited meeting time to hear from the public. Per our policy, non-residents can submit unlimited amounts of written comment to the committee at any time via fax, email, or mail. And in extraordinary circumstances, the chair always has the discretion to pull out the agenda to hear from any to put on the agenda to hear from any non-residents the committee wishes to hear from. Just to clarify, this would not be as public comment, but as a separate agenda item. So we feel there is sufficient discretion already built into the existing public comment that we do not recommend any changes. So we took no formal action. Though we did agree as a committee to discuss at a future meeting whether the residence-only requirement should also apply to our public hearing policy, as it currently does not, which many of us discovered through Powder House deliberations, where we heard from many residents from Cambridge, for example, on whether we should open a new school in our district. So we will take that up in subcommittee and bring recommendations forward to the body. We also discussed how best to promulgate guidelines at each meeting so procedure and expectations are clear, consistent, and fair. After considering proposed amendments by the chair, myself, to the existing policy, Ms. Patone and Dr. Curley agreed to meet before our next subcommittee to draft. Essentially, we look to create a short script for the chair to be able to read at the start of all public comment to make expectations clear and consistent, and make it clear that applause is not appropriate during public comment. We also want to change the public hearing policy to add this as well. That new language will be proposed at the April Rules meeting. We also looked at the sexual harassment policy for review. To summarize, you can read the details in my report in the packet, but we had received public comment here that the current policy is inconsistent with other policies that exist, and concerns that student and staff may not be sufficiently aware of the existing policies and procedures. The subcommittee certainly thinks that this is an important concern. We specifically asked the district to clarify the to report at a future meeting to look at the extent of the problem in the district in terms of student-to-student harassment, staff-to-staff, staff-to-student, et cetera, to propose any changes to the current policy if administration feels is necessary, and to report out on specifically clarifying the definition we use for sexual harassment, current policies and procedures used, and how the policies are currently promulgated, particularly to students. We looked at controlled choice. Actually, we didn't look at controlled choice. We're still waiting to hear from district council, who did not provide the language in time for our meeting. We're probably going to just be striking the unconstitutional aspects of that policy before we do a more in-depth review of it. Online fundraising, we had deliberated in the fall on this and finalized an updated policy, but we're waiting to get a legal answer on specifically on how donations by school committee get announced and approved. We approve some here in this forum, but not all, and we wanted clarification before we approve the new policy. Meeting adjourned at 7:15.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes and report, the report of the March 11th rules.
There is a motion by Ms. Palmer, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Ms. Palmer, I would like to thank your committee for taking up several topics and clarifying some of our policies in such a timely fashion. Mr. Fitzgerald, are you prepared to report out, or would you like to give a quick budget update?
Yes, I'm not prepared to report out on the two meetings that are on the agenda. So my apologies to my colleagues and the community. But I would like to give an update on the budget. Since our last meeting, we've met as a finance subcommittee of the whole. We met on March 6th and March 13th. We have reviewed preliminary enrollment projections provided by the district. As has been the case over the last several years, there are mostly minor adjustments based on increased amounts of students in one grade versus the next. We call that a bubble internally here, but so minor adjustments there. We've also reviewed all of the requests from principals and department heads for the coming year, both operational and staffing requests. Again, that's just a review of what was requested and not a decision. And specifically not a prioritization. On March 25, so this is next week, we'll meet to, again, discuss the preliminary budget, and school committee members will be providing input on that budget, either thematic inputs or budget line inputs. So March 25 is next, and then April 10 is the following one after that. But for the public, the meeting that you really want on your calendar is May 2nd. This is the, I say that without jest to my colleagues. May 2nd is the meeting you want. It's Superintendent Skipper will present her fiscal year 2020 budget to the school committee, at which time the school committee will amend that as we need, and then present it to the city council for approval. So mark your calendars, May 2nd. Next meeting is March 25 next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Given that we're now into our 4th hour of meeting and the rigor of tonight's meeting, I'm going to push the remaining subcommittee reports to our next meeting, and I would hope that we will be able to get caught up, but I think tonight has been a substantial meeting. So I'm now going to move on to item number 7, new business, field trips, with the exception of the one we already approved, the Puerto Rico trip. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve from June 3rd. Do I say the dates?
Yes, please.
From June 3rd to June 7th, the Healy School grade 5 students will visit Nature's Classroom in Western Massachusetts. The transportation will be via bus, and the student cost will be $475. On April 12th through April 15th, 16 East Somerville Community School 8th grade students will visit Washington, D.C. to attend the Urban Debate League National Tournament. The transportation will be via Amtrak, and student costs will be $400 to $500. And from April 16th to April 23rd, a small group of Somerville High School juniors and seniors will visit Southern California to explore STEM fields and increase student engagement in science. Transportation via airplane and charter bus. Student cost may vary from $0 to $2,000.
Ms. Bertone?
Through you, Chair Norman. I'm just curious about that last one. What is it, and where is it from, and How do the students get determined to go?
Dr. Abeda, can you speak to that, please?
Sure. As you can tell, the date is 2020, so this is way in advance, and they're submitting this early so that they can get approval to know that they can go and then fundraise. The purpose is to really explore STEM and science, and so a small group of students will be going. At this point in time, we don't know who will be going yet because it's on the agenda for approval first to make sure they can go. But the point is to study science.
Ms. Patona, follow-up?
Yes, through you, Chair Norman. I guess what I'm getting at is who's sponsoring this, kind of how you're going to determine who gets to go, kind of the same kind of information we might get for a trip to Puerto Rico, and I don't know if we're going to have enough of that information to decide tonight.
I can tell you who's sponsoring it. It's Yar and Teach, and they're going to Southern California. They'll explore STEM fields and the purpose is to increase student engagement in science. They're hoping to visit the unique natural environments, and at this point in time, they're seeking funding and hoping that, there's a sliding scale so that way all kids that are interested can go. But if you would like, we can have them come and answer questions, just like we did with Puerto Rico.
I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I think it's kind of a big enough deal that I would love to hear more about why, source, who would be invited, things like that.
Okay. Dr. Beda, can we get that on a future agenda? Thank you very much. Are there any other? So, Dr. Ackman, could you make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment then, based on what Ms. Patone said. I would then propose that we just approve the first two, the June 3rd to June 7th and April 12th to April 15th.
So the amendment is to just approve the first two. There's a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Ms. Palmer, and we are voting on that amendment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. So can I get a motion for the first two trips?
My motion.
Oh, look at us being efficient. Fabulous. All right. Thank you. It's been a long night. Yep. So can we get a vote on the amendment?
We did.
We just did. Can we get a vote on the amended motion? Thank you very much, my colleagues, for making it a team effort. I appreciate that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Whew, got through the field trips. Okay, next item of business, acceptance of donations.
I move to accept with gratitude the following donation, $100 donated to CTE Child Development Program from Daisy Sandoval.
There is a motion by Ms. Palmer, seconded by Mr. Green. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We accept those donations. Item number C, high school.
I move to accept the superintendent's recommendation to grant the Somerville High School diploma to Landy Valcor.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Patone. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? No, we have another Somerville graduate. Very exciting. I will now take items from the board members. Ms. O'Sullivan.
I had a question about the letter that we received and the public comment that came to us about the discrimination incidents that were in the schools. And I know that Superintendent Skipper, you shared some of the things that have been happening to address this. And I wonder if, I guess, just clarification if it's on the calendar for a future meeting to get more in-depth.
Superintendent Skipper?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, the plan is we're going to be giving you guys a memo that will detail the actions we've taken, and then also meet with a group of parents to talk through some of the things that they were proposing to figure out how we might be able to move forward with some of them in conjunction with the mayor's office.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Building off Ms. O'Sullivan's point, I know that I will be making some budget requests to address some of these things, so the sooner we can get that memo, the better.
Thank you. Any other new items for board members? Dr. Ackman, are there condolences? Thank you.
The Somerville School Committee would like to extend its deepest condolences to the families of Doris Markinnis, mother of Lynn Chalmers, nurse at the Arthur Healy School; Evelyn Ramos Rodriguez Pilot, former paraprofessional at the Argenziano School; Marvin Salazar, son of Nelson Salazar, ESOL counselor at Scale; Catherine Black, mother of Ken Black, educational evaluator in the special ed department; and Susan Palter, Somerville Public Schools retired vision specialist.
We are adjourned.